All right. I'm so glad to see you. We are on day 3 of Fall in Love with Your Voice. And I've got a bunch more juicy stuff planned for today. We'll see what we can get through. But we're going to start with a little bit of something physical that we're going to do together. And my students, well, my student, Saren, will know about this. So we're going to do a little stretch with our arms. So if you have space around you, reach your arms out to the side and then reach them overhead so your palms are facing each other. And you're going to inhale. And you can even look up if you want. If it's comfortable for your neck, look up at your hands and fill up your whole body with air. And then exhale your arms, reaching out as they come down to your sides, reaching out. And you can kind of feel the openness in the chest and in the rib cage. And this is something I do at the beginning of my lessons with my students to just help get things set up posturally. A lot of times when we're going through life, we're on our phones or we're driving or we're sitting where we're kind of in more of a C shape with our bodies. So we just need to get everything a little bit more open and expanded and also aligned with the spine. Like I was saying yesterday, the spine is curvy. We don't want to make it straight, but we just want to have it in alignment. Because if the skeleton is doing the job of supporting our bodies, then our muscles can do what they're supposed to do. And we don't end up with muscles trying to do the work of the skeleton and ending up all tense because they're doing the work that they weren't designed to do. Okay, great. And then from there, I want you to check your range of motion with your neck. So just look to one side and pretend you're trying to see someone behind you, but without moving your body, only moving your head over there, and see how far you can go in one direction. And then come back to the center and then go to the other side and see how far you can go in that direction as well. Just kind of seeing, right? And we're not here to hurt ourselves. So be gentle with yourself while we're doing this stuff, okay? This is what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a little bit of vagus nerve activation. So just kind of log in your mind what that was for in terms of range of motion, what you had going on with that. And I'm going to tell you just for a moment about the vagus nerve. Does anybody know? I think I asked this question previously in the masterclass, but are people familiar with the vagus nerve or with the idea of vagal tone? Yeah, I remember Judith, you were like somewhat. Okay, so this is a really important nerve to understand in the body, and Chelsea knows about it. Yes, I love it. So it's really important for everybody to understand the vagus nerve, but especially for singers, I feel like, because what we do as singers is inherently tied to creating vagal tone. And so if we can understand how it all works together, we're going to start with alignment in our bodies, like I talked about. The vagus nerve, I'm just going to tell you where it's located first, and then I'll tell you what it does. It goes from the brain and it has 2 branches. So it goes down either side through both sides of the larynx, talk about for singers, down through and then loops back up around and comes down through both lungs and through both sides of the diaphragm down to the pelvic floor. So it basically runs the entire length of the spine and of the torso, I should say. And it's so yeah, and goes through all of these major parts of our vocal mechanism. So the vagus nerve is a major nerve that carries information between the brain and body and controls vital functions like heart rate and digestion. It's also a key part of the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps the body relax after a stressful situation or during a stressful situation, right? So when we get up to sing in front of people, that can sometimes be a stressful situation. By the way, Saren, you were fantastic last night. Really, really well done. We had our mid-semester recital last night and Saren stepped up. They are in their first semester of voice lessons and went from kind of 0 to 60. It's just, I can't wait to see where they will continue to go after this. So well done. Yes, take a bow. So the parasympathetic, do you guys know about the parasympathetic nervous system? Is that something that's familiar? Rest and digest versus fight or flight of the sympathetic nervous system. We have kind of these 2 tracks that we can get on. And I've studied polyvagal theory a little bit. Stephen Porges, it's something that's been around since I think the 1960s for a long time. And he talks about a ventral vagal state, which is kind of where you can shift and you're not always at the parasympathetic state, but you're in like a feeling good state, right? Where you feel like I'm in the driver's seat of my life, I'm flowing with what's happening around me and not sort of in fight or flight, which is where like flight meaning like you want to run away from the situation, or fight meaning like you want to punch someone's lights out because you're just in a state of overactivation, right? That's like when we're hunting the beasts in the forest and one of them who's bigger than us starts running after us and we need to get away. And that part of our nervous system activates to keep us safe. But we don't want that part of our nervous system to activate when we don't want it to. And so if we're aware of what's happening in our nervous system, then we can have something to say about what's happening. And that's really important for us as singers, so that we can, stay in that more ventral vagal state instead of heading into fight or flight in important situations like performances. Okay, so what does the vagus nerve do? Controls heart rate, digestion, and other vital functions, regulates inflammation, helps control mood, helps control the body's immune response, helps control breathing, ding, 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 helps control muscle tension, pain tolerance, and other systems in the body. So how can I stimulate the vagus nerve and create what's called vagal tone? Deep, slow breathing. So this is where yoga also comes into play, but this is what we do when we're training, right? We take those deep breaths and we expend them in a slow manner as singers, right? We're extending that exhalation that is stimulating the vagus nerve and creating vagal tone, which is good for our mood. It's good for our nervous system. Everything becomes more regulated when we're in that place. So meditation, we're going to talk about meditation later, yoga, singing and chanting, splashing cold water, laughing, hugging, and massages. So what can happen if the vagus nerve isn't functioning properly? Changes to heart rate, blood pressure, or blood sugar, difficulty swallowing, or loss of gag reflex, dizziness or fainting on standing, hoarseness, wheezing, or loss of voice, dun, 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 unexplained weight loss, nausea, and vomiting. So it's a key player. So I'm going to teach you one exercise that I know about, other than singing and yoga and meditating and deep breathing, that has an effect on the body. So we tested, let's test it again. I'm sorry, I blabbed for so long, but let's just look to either side. Again, not to hurt ourselves, but just to look at that range of motion, not to compete. I can do farther than you. Nope, just pay attention to yourself. It's good. Okay. And now we're going to do a thing where we're going to look up in like the upper corner of the room without moving our head. So just our eyes are going to go up. And actually, hold on just a second before you start. I'm just going to pull up my timer. So we're just going to do this for 30 seconds. Stopwatch. Okay. So looking up to one corner first. And again, don't strain it, but just have your eyes looking up in that direction without your head moving. So head stays facing forward and then just the eyes are going up to that corner. And if you feel it starting to get uncomfortable, you can just ease out of it a little bit. So the point of it isn't to overdo it, but just to get that feeling of eyes going up at that angle. Bring my stopwatch over where I can see it from my angle. Okay, that's great. Now bring them back to center. And then let's go up to the other side. 30 seconds here. It actually goes by pretty fast. So looking up, again, not straining, but just keeping our eyes up in that space. Over to the side. For another 5 seconds or so here. Good, and then coming back to center. Now, test that range of motion again on your neck and see how it feels. Does anybody notice a difference there? Feel free to put it in the chat or unmute and say. Any difference? Anything you noticed? Okay. Oh, a little more range on your left. Yeah. And usually it is asymmetrical. I meant to mention that before. It's normal for you not to have as much range of motion to one side or the other. But that's something that we work on also in yoga is bringing symmetry to the body as much as possible. And mostly alignment, right? So it's not about being symmetrical for symmetry's sake, but for the overall health of everything that we're doing. Same. Oh, a little dizzy. Yeah. So the interesting thing about this is when we're in fight or flight, our eyes are fixed, right? And we're like, ah. And so when we do this thing where our eyes go off to the side, it gives our body a feeling of safety because we can't do that when we're in danger. We have to be looking at what is dangerous, right? And so that's just one way of kind of tricking ourselves. I also thought, think about a nursing baby looking up at its mom too, what it's doing. Same, right? Isn't that interesting? Okay, so there's our vagus nerve practice for the day. And I wanted to also share as we're starting, one of my favorite Gandhi quotes, which I meant to look up. I first learned it when I was in Austria. It was on the side of a church in German, which, you know, Gandhi wasn't a German speaker, but es gibt kein Weg zum Frieden. Der Friede ist der Weg, I believe is how it goes. I might have gotten some articles wrong in their cases, but there is no path to peace. Peace is the path. And I love this wisdom so much because a lot of times I think as singers, we have this idea of the end goal, like what we're going to be or what we're becoming. And so we sometimes forget about, like, that's the end point, right? We forget about the means that are taking us to that end. And so what Gandhi's saying here is peace doesn't exist over there. That's not, you know, you're not going to suddenly arrive at this place, but the path you're traveling is the peace all along the way. And it's kind of an enjoy the journey kind of thing, I guess, is being present. Great. And I wanted to circle back. Oh, Kay isn't here anymore. I was thinking maybe it was Kay's question. So we were talking about the law and the love. And I thought about this too with the exercise when we're doing these things, whether it's in yoga or whether we're doing vagus nerve stimulation. We all, okay, right. I
Right.
to the left. So yeah, so don't overdo it, but explore that, I would say. Welcome friends who are joining us now. So we always want to keep those two in balance. And I mean, raise your hand if you're willing, if you know you're hard on yourself. Like, is anybody here kind of hard on themselves? Yeah, so that just means that when we have like the balance here between the law and the love, the law is just being heavier, right? So we have to give more love. And I would say as singers and as humans, we want to sort of let the love be our default, and then we'll know if we need to bring a little bit more law into the picture. So we have a foundation of love in singing, and then our training is the law aspect of it, which is we think about universal principles, universal law that just exists because of physics and because of gravity, you know, the way that our world is. Newton's laws, like motion, things that just exist, right? And because we have these tangible bodies and happens to be our instrument also, then we are subject to these laws and we want to make them work for us as singers. And so we can't just say, you know, screw the law, whatever. We can't actually do that and have success. We need to understand it, but then we need to have a really healthy dose of love that's coming in there as well. So I wanted to share this story. This came to my mind on Monday when this question was asked by, I'm still not sure who asked this question. It might have been Kay, but Kay's not here anymore. I don't know where she went because it was something like iPhone that said in the name. But the question was, where was it? Oh yeah, what if I made love the law? Does anyone have any preliminary thoughts about this? I've thought about it a lot, and I have some thoughts I want to share, but what do you guys think about making love the law? Is it possible? Is it wise? Can we? Yeah, Judith, please.
Maybe it would over structure it.
Overstructure love.
Yeah.
Ooh, ooh. Oh, I love that so much. Okay, Yes. Okay. Because we have sort of in politics, we kind of have the law and the love a little bit too, right? And we have people who are all about big government and welfare and they want to provide for people and they're thinking about other people. And then we have the people who are like, no, and what's mine is mine. And, let's keep government small and, I'll give people money if I want to and all this. And so it seems kind of like there's that too. But then if we get into sort of the people who want the love, but then they're mad at the other people who don't, who see things differently, then it's like, oh no, the love has gone toward hatred suddenly. It's like, it's this weird thing that I think, anyway, that's what came into my mind when you said that. Um, so I had this experience when I was kind of going through my divorce in 2011 when I moved to New York and shortly thereafter decided to leave my first husband. And I was kind of re-evaluating what the law was for me at that time. And I also was temping while I was in the city to do auditions in between gigs. And I had some really great temping jobs. I made good money. I was I'm trying to remember, 31st floor on the south end of Central Park, where I had this beautiful view of these trees, and it was just gorgeous. But I also had a candy dish at my desk, and I was the one responsible for restocking it too. This was really dangerous for me. Um, Law is the avenue by which love can be expressed. Ooh, 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 yeah, I like that. So I had an issue with this candy. I'm telling you right now that I actually went to an addiction recovery program in order to overcome my love of baked goods and candy because going through my divorce, it was like eating my feelings every day. And there's so many good bakeries in New York, you guys. So it's like endless opportunities for indulging. Anyway, so I was sitting there and every day I'm like, oh, I'll just have one more, I'll just have one more. And every day, it was time for me to go home and I'm just like bloated and I'm walking along and I'm like, I am not going to do that again tomorrow. That was horrible. That was really bad choices. I'm not going to do that again. Right. So it was like, and at a certain point, I had to ask myself, like, is this actually loving to myself? Because I was all about the self-love when I was reevaluating the law. And um and so what I ended up, this was like a years long process of like weaning myself, but I did stop temping at that job. And that was such a blessing because I really needed to not have a candy dish next to me all day long. That was just, tempting fate. It was too hard. But what I came to understand was that we do want to do a loving thing for ourselves and indulging. So like the law would be you eat a lot of candy, you get bloated and feel horrible, right? And the love would be like, but I don't want to deprive myself at the same time. So where do you find that balance, right, between those two things? Because for sure, I thought, being more permissive in that department was being loving to myself at first. And then I kind of had to learn like, okay, there's more of the law that needs to come into this equation. Okay, I got that off my chest. Any other thoughts about that? Oh, yeah. And Emily, I feel like the law is the avenue by which love can be expressed. Yeah, I did hear something during that time that was something like, um, loving people, bridal passions versus elimination of passions. Right. So like moderation rather than cutting off entirely. I'm kind of a cutting off entirely person when it comes to sugar, just because it's just so hard for me to do a little bit. It's hard, unless it's like dark chocolate or something. But yeah, everybody has to. Oh, Lisa Prina, please.
You are so fast at responding. It's so good to see you and hear you. I love you.
Yes, you.
Yeah, so when you talk about law and love, I was thinking about this the other day and um like law, I think of if you want to bake a cake, there's certain ingredients, right? It's just it works a certain way, certain temperature. You want to make a baby, you have to have a sperm and an egg. Like there's no other way to do it, right? These are set principles. You want to sing a song, you've got to employ the vocal folds in a certain way and your breath and all of that. Now, how you do it, the attitude with which you do it, the spirit with which you do it can affect it. So if you have a baby because heaven forbid you were raped or something, that's going to have a different feeling for you versus if you created that child out of love in a loving relationship, right?
Mm.
So it's the spirit with which we apply the law is the law part of it.
Mm.
But the law can't be changed. It's unalterable and it's impersonal. So, I think that's kind of comforting actually to be like, well, this is just how the voice functions. It's not bad if you can't do it that way and you're just learning how to operate your body. Um, it's not personal. It's just learning how to use the law and then loving
Yes.
yourself through the process.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. It's interesting. I did a lesson with Andrew Byrne back in January. I mentioned this earlier in the masterclass. And he's the brain-based guy who he works a lot with the nervous system, the vagus nerve, and everything and all the anatomy for singing together. And he taught me in the beginning of the lesson something that I didn't know about my voice, because we have 8 muscles in the tongue, which each have 2 sides. And so they're being controlled by separate hemispheres of the brain, which means technically we have like 16 muscles in the tongue. And a way that my teachers, which I've had, I don't know how many, I should count them up, but I've probably had somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 teachers has it been that many? Maybe not that many, but over more than 30 years of voice lessons. And yeah, sometimes I had just one for one semester when I was in my undergrad, and then I moved on to a different one. So the way that it's taught is just release the tension, like let your tongue go, let it be released. And um, he taught me, and Andrew Byrne taught me in the first couple of minutes of our lesson how to diagnose my tongue tension, which I was really kind of blown away. And I actually want to continue my studies with him so that I can learn more about his approach to singing, because it's very law-based, like very, very law-based, but grounded in science and not sort of the Pharisaical law of that's sometimes taught from a place of, well, this has been my experience, only anecdotal evidence, which you get from teachers a lot. Which is why it's so important. I saw I think it was Instagram. It might have been, yeah, from Rachel Willis Sorensen just this morning, where she said, the biggest mistake I ever made with my voice was paying more attention to what other people were saying about it than what I could feel for myself, which I'm completely of that philosophy as well, that we have to be the owner of our instrument and we have to understand it and understand it well enough from the inside, right? Our teacher can't ever feel what we're feeling in our voice. They could hear what it's sounding like and they can help us along the way, but ultimately we have to be in the driver's seat and be the one understanding how it all works together and how it feels, right? If it feels right for you, that's great. That's what the teacher needs to know. And then if it sounds right to them too, then that's the perfect blend of what we want to be have happening with the voice. So instead of just thinking release tongue tension, now I know which side of my tongue is weak and cannot release because it's not strong. And so I'm strengthening that side of my tongue so that I can have symmetry with my tongue. These 16 muscles that are all working together to either help us in our singing. Honestly, the tongue can be such a help, or it can be a huge hindrance if we don't know what we're doing with it. And it's going in the wrong place, which happens a lot with our English language and the way that we use our articulators. So we have to be mindful of that. Please, Holly.
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about kind of what you guys were saying and like love and law. And it's funny because you hear people talk a lot about how love should be boundless, right? It should be limitless. It should be, I completely disagree. Love without boundaries is self-destruction. And I'm really I think loving someone unconditionally is still possible, but with boundaries. Um, and that's a hard lesson I learned. But as you were talking about your candy addiction, I just giggled because I was like, you're like, I love myself. I want to eat something that tastes good. And then at the same time, you're like, damn it, it's like I overindulge, And so I don't know. Yeah, that's a line that's stuck with me for a long time. So yeah, love without boundaries is self-destruction. So I think it ties in nicely to um the analogy you just made on how this woman you talked about, how other people were like, oh, you sound amazing, but she felt like it didn't feel good for her. Like she was probably damaging her vocal cords with the way that she was singing. So I don't know. Lots of analogies there, but just a little thought I wanted to add in.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And the interesting thing about, yeah, what was I going to say about that experience that I had with sugar? Um, left me. I forgot what I was going to say. That's okay though. Boundaries for sure. And oh, this is what I was going to say. I was coming out of a marriage where he controlled what I ate. And so it was like, I'm going to eat whatever I want, right? It was like this feeling of complete rebellion against, um, the limitations that were placed upon me. And I think sometimes we do go through those phases in life where the pendulum has swung one direction and it has to correct itself. And sometimes it goes the other way before it comes back to a center place. So I forgive myself. I see myself with so much compassion as I reflect back on that time in my life when I was trying to find balance again and trying to find those boundaries, right? That felt right for me. When someone else is setting boundaries for you, it can sometimes feel like, no, like get away. So, all right. So okay, so what I was going to say is about the law. Sometimes the law can become losing the forest for the trees, right? So this idea of focusing on a tree or one or two trees and not seeing the big picture. So we were talking about this yesterday, might have been Monday, can't remember, with regard to right brain and left brain thinking, right? So left brain being language and numbers and analysis and zooming in, and the right brain being that big picture, zooming out, creative, I love everyone kind of energy, and finding the balance between those two too. So the way that I talk about this in the studio when I'm teaching lessons is when you have a piece, you're starting out with a piece, you have to learn it, and that it becomes sort of like an obstacle course for you as you're learning pitches and rhythms, and you're putting these things into your voice, which I talk about pitch inflection, which is a feeling of smoothness and connection between pitch intervals, not imitating the piano, which is a percussion instrument, pound, 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 right? Clunk, clunk. But having a smoothness to the voice, a legato, which is a foundational element of the voice, vocal line. And you're putting all this, you're putting it into your instrument, and you're learning also all those notes and rhythms and looking at arpeggio sheet music often, right? Which is all that left brain function. And once you've gotten the nuts and bolts in place with your song and you know it really well, then you can move over into more of the love and more of the right brain, which I call the playground. So from obstacle course to playground, and instead of being, sort of dodging, I think about like American Gladiators or whatever, one of those things where they are going through an obstacle course, and you're about to like get knocked off the pedestal into a big pool of slime or whatever. Instead of being in that place, now you're like that parkour artist who's like doing flips off stuff, and because you understand the lay of the land with that song, right? And that's kind of the gift of having obeyed the law. Then you get to step into the love and really enjoy yourself and feel joy as you're singing that piece. Great. Treat. Oh, Lisa. Lisa's so smart about food. She's done a lot of research about food, and I'm into that too. It's a little bit tangential for this week, I think. I was just thinking about insulin resistance. I've listened to a couple of podcasts this week about insulin resistance, and oh, it factors in, you guys. It factors in so much. Okay, so we talked a little bit previously about perfectionism also, and I just want to add one sort of one more element to it, one more concept to this topic, which is something that I learned from Stephen P. Brown, who's a British, but I think he lives in Florida, conductor. And I met him back in like 2017 or so. We had a phone conversation, and he was explaining to me some things that were really important that I could barely wrap my mind around. But he was saying, when we're seeking perfection, which like we talked about before, like, do you think you know what that is? We are avoiding meaning. And so when things go down the way that they go down, That's part of our human experience. And so it's not that we can't, cross our T's and dot our I's and go through that obstacle course of learning and the law. But we have to do it again, like Lisa was saying, with this spirit of love. So let me actually share my first infographic. I know I talked about infographics yesterday, and then I never showed you a single one because I'm horrible. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here real quick so you can see. And I need to actually give this guy a name because yeah, I just need to add a name to it because I thought of one today, which is the joy of practice. Let's see here, share. Share. Okay, so this is my joy of practice infographic. So this is how we go through the obstacle course and we approach performance. So basically, anytime we're practicing, which means using our voice, right? Anytime that our voice is being used, even when we're speaking, we are practicing. We're teaching it certain functionalities and we're teaching it how to operate. So if we start from a place of curiosity, and that's like, AKA not judgment, and then we head into a place of exploration from our curiosity and allow that to be sort of our driving force, right? And from exploration go into playfulness. And these can kind of cross circulate too. Curiosity, exploration, playfulness. But allow it to be more from this side of, as it says in the center bubble, childlike wonder. Not from this, I should know how to do this already, or I want to be better than I am right now, but from a place of presence. Ooh, that's a good one to have on here too. From a place of presence, approaching our art, which is the sounds that we make with our voice, the way that we use it, to, whether we're singing Mozart or whether we're singing, Celine Dion, whatever. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. Seems great. We want to have this sort of approach to it, to stay in a growth mindset and to stay away from the inner critic. Singing is vulnerable no matter what, but we don't want to go into any sort of shame spiral about it. We're going to have better days than others. Certain days we're going to be like, wow, my voice is really working. It's on fire today. And we don't always know why. And then the next day it's like, why isn't that thing working that was working yesterday? And it can be so frustrating. But this is another time when we treat our voice like a small child, who's learning to walk or learning to all the things, because that's what we are too. And that's what our vocal folds are as they're learning new skills is. And sometimes that's like, even for a more mature singer, learning how to be with your voice through the maturing process, right? As we get older, the voice is changing, right? And so we still take this attitude of childlike wonder and compassion and presence into our practice. And then suddenly practice doesn't feel like torture or like a chore anymore. So this is just one of my sort of concept. Let's see here. Oh, stop share. That I wanted to share with you guys. And from there, I want to talk about presence. So we talked about singing from the inside out. Do you guys remember this, rather than singing from the outside in, where we're like, hey, what do they want? Can I be what they want? And trying to gauge your audience and sound a certain way, or in the case of songwriters, like write a song that other people will like, where the input is coming from the outside. And then flipping that over into singing from the inside out. Do you guys remember? What do you guys remember about what we talked about before about singing from the inside out? How do we do that? Where does it come from? What's our source if it's not what other people think or what they might like? Yeah. Yeah, that love, like we talked about yesterday. What's left when you let go of everything? It's love, and it feels like support too. Oh my goodness. And I'm going to say, It comes from a place of presence and stillness within ourselves. So I'm going to share a story with you. Oh my goodness. The time flies by, you guys. This story comes from some Equus coaching that I did. Do you guys know what Equus coaching is? Also known as equine therapy. Have you guys heard of that? It's you work
Yes.
with horses. Oh, did somebody say something?
Yes, I worked at a place that did it.
Chelsea? Will you tell me a little bit about that?
I don't know a ton, but just they had the girls, it was teenage girls who were really troubled. And the horses have a sense about people. Like they can feel your heart rate from like 4 feet away.
Ooh.
And so it's just a really powerful medium for people to get into the present and learn trust and
Oh my
overcome
gosh.
hardships,
Sorry, what was that last thing you said?
overcome like trauma and hardships. And
Yeah.
also just trust themselves and trust something else, like another living creature.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. And I had this opportunity, a friend of mine in New York, was becoming an equine therapy coach. And she invited me to come with her to San Luis Obispo, which is on the central coast of California. Beautiful area. It's actually, it was on Martha Beck's ranch, Martha Beck is the daughter of Hugh Nibley, if you know who that is. And it was just like this opportunity that came up. And I had done a little bit of stuff with her horse just in upstate. We had gone up together, and horses for me had always represented a powerful animal that could hurt me. Like that's how my parents tried to keep me safe from horses, was like, make sure if you feed them with a flat hand, because they can bite off your fingers. Or like, don't walk around the backside of a horse because it can kick you, and it can kick you in the head, or it can really hurt you. And so when I went to this equine therapy, I had a sense of, as a confident grown woman, I had a sense of trepidation inside of myself around the horses, and just like, touching them was like, maybe I just didn't feel comfortable. And so I think it was just a weekend. It was 2 or maybe 3 days long. And I got more and more comfortable around the horses as time went on. And I became aware of that sort of the scripting that was inside of me that was making me uncomfortable and fearful. And the final day, we, and like Chelsea was saying, horses are very sensitive. So, and maybe some of you have experience with horses, even if it's not in this therapeutic setting. But if you want a horse to do something, but you're not clear what you want it to do, and you're not taking leadership. Oh, okay. All right, Judith, thanks for joining. The horse is going to ignore you. You're just like dead to them. You're like, whoever, like whatever, like, I just don't even care who you are or that you exist. But if you can be clear about what you want and what you're doing in that moment, then they will do it. They will just, it's almost like a universal law. They will just follow you because you're so clear. And I'm gonna tell you what the metaphor is there in just a moment. But what we did on this final day was we were in partnerships. So I was with one other person, a lady, and I didn't know her well at all. And we had to lead a horse through a series of obstacles in an arena without saying a word to each other. We had to just do it together and get the horse to go and do the things that we wanted it to do. And I just kind of panicked at first, like, we can't talk to each other. Like, how is this even going to work? But it put me into a place and gave me a feeling that I have never felt really before or since. But it taught me a really important lesson about trust. And that was, the partner and I were going to do this together without conventional means of conversing, without communicating with language. And in that moment, when I felt that she trusted me too, it was truly a feeling of support, like I had never felt before in my life. A feeling of, go ahead. There is nothing you can do wrong right now. I believe in you. You got this. And it wasn't until after we were out of the arena afterward and I just was crying and I was trying to figure out what the feeling was that I was like, oh, that's what support feels like, right? It's somebody else believing in you without agenda, without telling you what to do, without expecting certain things of you, but just being there. And it actually reminded me later, I've read some books about near-death experiences. Have you guys ever read anything like that or seen anything about near-death experiences? Anybody? Yeah, a little bit. So what these people report back, I mean, it's just like again and again and again, the same story. One of the books I read was by a doctor who was completely an atheist before he went, and then he had this experience, and he was like, oh my gosh, like the palpable feeling of like everything around you, like your environment, when you're in that space, right? Like crossing over into the afterlife is just like, you're loved. You are loved. There is nothing you can do that would be wrong. So I'm going to leave you guys with this thought today because we do need to wrap up. And that is, what would happen if you approached your singing from this space of you are loved? There is nothing you can do wrong. And then you went into the law side and you learned, and there were notes and rhythms, and there were, I mean, it's a different process for everybody. In fact, Lizzie, if you would feel comfortable, I would love for you to share just a little bit about your process with songwriting and how that happens for you. And if there's an element of stillness or presence, or like how you're receiving, or, you know, how that creative process happens for you. Would you mind sharing just a little bit about that? Lizzie's a singer-songwriter.
Yeah. So I've learned that it's different every time. I tend to be overly critical when I'm writing first drafts. But sometimes there's this. Actually, it happened recently. I'm writing a new song right now, and I just started writing and just letting myself write anything, and it just started flowing, and I actually liked it better than something I'd written where I just was overthinking everything. And so just giving myself permission to just create.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
And some people call it channeling, where you're just sort of tuning into what's there, and it just comes to you very effortlessly, and it almost feels like it's not coming from you, it's coming from somewhere else, and yet you're the one like putting that down on a page and creating those chords and whatever it is. Does it feel like that when you do it that way?
Yeah. Mhm.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you discovered that, because you've been songwriting. How long have you been writing songs?
5 years now.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm so excited to see where this will lead, because your songs are already awesome. So if they're coming from this more inspired place, that's easier for you, right? And isn't a place of overthinking or judgment, like you're saying, I'm sure they're going to be really special. So thank you so much for sharing that. Anything else? Please feel free if you have any other thoughts.
Um,
And if you don't, that's okay too.
I'm not sure. I'll
You're
let you know.
fine. No, that's awesome. Yeah, so we all have this sort of creative process. And even for those of us who have sung mostly music that's been written by other people, that's actually the time that we can get really caught up in the law and by what's been done before, and trying to sort of fill the shoes, these big shoes of legendary singers, like legendary opera singers, for instance, but also other singers. And we should never forget that our gifts are just as worthy as theirs. And, you know, timing is everything. Timing is so important. But as we approach ourselves, knowing that we are of infinite worth, and we go inside and find that place of stillness. What we're going to talk about tomorrow is Eckhart Tolle, the power of now, and this idea of presence. along with some other things. But has anybody read The Power of Now or is familiar with Eckhart Tolle's work? Yeah, Holly. And we'll talk about meditation too. And Holly, I'd love to call on you to share some things tomorrow, if that's okay, about your journey with meditation.
Absolutely, would be happy to.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, guys, any questions before we go? Takeaways that you want to share from today's session together? Anything that stuck out to you that you'll be incorporating into your life? Any good reminders? It's
I was
okay.
gonna say, reminder of love with boundaries
Mm.
for me. But also, Lizzie, I think it's awesome you're a songwriter. I'm also a
Yeah,
songwriter,
Holly.
and hearing you get into that state of where you channel it naturally. You don't like sit down and try to. I can't write when I sit down and I'm like, I want to write a song today. Nope. Like it just doesn't work that way for me. I have to be inspired by something, and it catches me in the most mundane moments, like in the shower. I'll have a pad on the toilet with a pen because I know as soon as I get in the shower, everything is going to start flowing in. So, anyways, just a good reminder of like tapping into your natural abilities and gifts, and like things progress as you progress. So,
Lovely. Yeah, and maybe it's the splashing water that's stimulating your vagus nerve, and then suddenly your creative process is awakened as well.
honestly, it could be. It's because your mind like quiets. It's like washing dishes, doing laundry. I get my best ideas doing the stupidest shit, pardon my language, but it just cracks me up. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that as well. Well, thank you so much for coming today, guys. And I look forward to another awesome session tomorrow. And feel free to reach out to me if you do want to talk about anything in particular or follow up on anything that we've touched on. Otherwise, I'm going to keep plowing forward, and we are going to get more into my methodology tomorrow in terms of like nuts and bolts of how I put all this together. We've been talking about a lot of philosophy, which is my jam, and I love to kind of plant seeds in people's minds to help them be more open. And we've kind of been doing that these 3 days, but we're going to get into some more specifics starting tomorrow. So I look forward to that. And thank you all for coming. And I'll see you tomorrow. You're so welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, bye. You're welcome.